So, as I said, are we recording? Yes. Sorry. Technical issues. Never done this before. If Wilson can get the league created, he thinks he can prevent, I don't know, another world war. All right? And so, if you sign the Treaty of Versailles, you're also agreeing to join the League of Nations. Because buried in the Treaty of Versailles is the establishment of the League of Nations. Now, the thing that's going to cause some trouble is Article 10 of the Covenant of the League, which is the directions for how to run the League of Nations. Get my notes. If I was prepared, I would have had this already out, wouldn't I? So, it says here, don't try to write this down verbatim, but here's Article 10, part of it. It says, the members of the League undertake to respect and preserve as against external aggression the territorial integrity and existing political independence of all members of the League. In case of any such aggression, or in case of any threat or danger of such aggression, the Council shall advise upon the means by which this obligation shall be fulfilled. Is that clear as day? It's kind of vague, isn't it? If you're in the League of Nations, you're agreeing to help protect against external aggression the integrity and independence of all the other members of the League. Okay? And if something starts going south, the Council shall advise upon the means by which the obligation shall be fulfilled. So if you're a member of the League of Nations and another country attacks another member of the League, what if the Council tells you you have to send troops in to help protect the other country? That's an obligation. It doesn't say that, but could it be implied? And, does anybody get to vote, for the council who might be involved in that thing? And this is the problem, okay? On the left there, I think that's the headquarters of the League of Nations. But look at the political cartoon on the right. There is Uncle Sam, and his hands are tied by a series of ropes that say the League of Nations, held by Europe and Great Britain and Japan. To a lot of people, this looks like it could be an entangling foreign alliance. And did somebody warn us against signing entangling foreign alliances? Yeah, George Washington in his farewell address in 1796. Don't sign alliances with the Europeans because you're going to get sucked into their petty power politics. Right? And so to a lot of people, this League of Nations looks like it could drag America into European disputes. But anyway, Wilson, signs the treaty, brings it back home to the United States. Slide. The guy on the right, whose name is partially buried by me, is William Borah. Okay, he's a senator. Remember, this treaty has to get through the United States Senate. And William Borah leads a group of what they call irreconcilables. These are people who are against the treaty. You're not going to change their mind. They're not going to vote for it no matter what. All right? So you can kind of write them off. Now remember, it takes, well, you don't know this, you haven't had government yet. It takes 2/3 of a vote of the Senate to ratify a treaty. Okay? So you can write off the irreconcilables. Right? But then there's reservationists. They're led by Henry Cabot Lodge. Slide. Henry Cabot Lodge. Remember, he's head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Okay? They have reservations. They're willing to think about the treaty, but they've got some concerns. Okay? All right. Now, my notes have about a page and a half or 2 pages about how this all went back and forth, but honestly, it's just not that important. Let's not get bogged down in it. A lot of Democrats would want to vote for the treaty because it was negotiated by Wilson, but some Democrats probably were against it. I've never really looked into it, to be honest. Certainly the Republicans, a lot of them will be against it. Okay, so what you're trying to do is convince the reservationists, the people who are like in the middle, to go ahead and vote for the treaty. But Lodge is going through the treaty page by page. Now, my notes make this sound like this is a ridiculous thing to go through this couple hundred-page treaty. But nowadays, when Congress is passing 2,000-page bills they haven't read, it doesn't necessarily strike me as irresponsible to actually want to read the darn thing before you pass it. All right, but Lodge may have been trying to drag things out. Because, of course, when Wilson comes home with his treaty, there's all kinds of public support. Because, the president's brought home a peace treaty. But if Lodge stops and really looks at it closely, then some of that momentum might fade. So, Wilson will appeal to the public. Slide. He goes out on like a tour of the country to try to drum up support for the treaty. Here he is in Los Angeles in 1919. That's Wilson tipping his top hat in the car there. Now, these three guys in the foreground, I tell you that one of the great things about being a history major is the ability to make informed speculation. Right? I have no idea who these people are. There's no caption on the photo, right? But I didn't want to bet their presidential security, because you think after having three presidents assassinated in the last 60 years, maybe they're starting to take presidential security a little more seriously. So I'm just guessing that the guy on the running board there looking tough is probably, Secret Service. All right. So Wilson's out trying to drum up public support for the treaty. Contact your senator, tell him you want him to vote for it. But then something happens. Wilson's been pushing himself hard. It's tough being a president during wartime. He might have already had some underlying medical issues, possibly. I think I've read that once. What happens is Wilson suffers a stroke. Okay. Now, it does not kill him. Okay. So he's still president, and he's still kind of functional, but he's not quite operating at full capacity. And so for several months, if you want to go in and see Mr. Wilson, guess who you have to get through? Mrs. Wilson, who's very protective. It's like, well, why do you need to see the president? What is your business? Are you going to go in there and stress him out with a bunch of crap? And so she's trying to protect the president from things that could upset him while he tries to recover from his stroke. And so the person who's probably got the best chance of pushing the treaty through is pulled off the effort. Now, like I said, I've got like a page and a half of notes about how they try to work the treaty through the Senate. I really don't care. Well, they say, well, can we change Article 10? Should we vote for it? It's not really important. It doesn't get through the Senate. Okay. But here's part of the problem. If the United States alters the treaty before they ratify it, is it the same treaty the other countries signed? It's just like the constitutional ratification back in 1788. It's what everyone else has already signed. If we change it, say, hey, we'll pass it with this, this alteration, then the other countries are going to come back and say, well, we want to make an alteration too, and it all falls apart like a house of cards. Okay. And so the United States does not join the League of Nations. It goes into existence, but the United States is not partaking in it. Okay. We eventually have to sign a separate peace treaty with Germany, like a year or two later, just to officially kind of end the war. Okay, because we haven't signed the treaty either side. So Wilson's efforts have yielded some results. He's got the League of Nations, but the United States does not take part. And maybe that hampers some of the strength of the League of Nations. Which leads us to failure of the Great Crusade. Well, Wilson sold this as a war to end all wars and to make the world safe for democracy. What are you going to do in a few years? The Europeans decide to get right back at it, which is what they're doing. I mean, there's fighting between, I think, Poland and Russia in 1920, I think, if I recall. There's a Russian Civil War. There's all this stress, and then, of course, later you'll see the rise of the fascists and the dictators in Europe, and the American public is very much, la 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 la. I don't want to hear it. Because we've been burned before, all right? World War I. We've been there, we've done that, we bought the shirt, and then later the Europeans get right back at it. We're going, well, that was pointless. Why did we get involved in the last war? It didn't solve the problem. Okay? So there's a legend about the Treaty of Versailles, and as I always tell you, sometimes the legends are true and sometimes they're not. Sometimes we're not sure, but supposedly one of the French generals, it might have been Field Marshal Foch, if I recall. I'm pulling it off the top of my head, so. But one of the French field marshals, upon reading the Treaty of Versailles, supposedly said, "This isn't a peace treaty, it's just a 20-year ceasefire." But guess what? He was right. But we'll get to that in further lectures later down the pike. So there's a couple slides buried here at the end of the PowerPoint. We'll look at them real quick. I'll just talk a little bit about them, things that you might find interesting. So, slide.